Does it seem about right to you?
But it said he left his son during the when he was assassinated.
That, so you guys finished this?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're one slide behind the other classes. That's fine. Generally, I find that one class is always ahead or behind another. And that's fine. Not always. Like I said, it tends to kind of rotate. The only class that's kind of the exception of that rule is fifth. Then again, they have extra 30 minutes. Let's put our feet on the floor and your shoes, please. First of all, you're in a skirt. Just think about the logistics of that. Second of all, shoes are part of the uniform. That's what was in hand, not order. Now, Cardinal Richelieu, as we've discussed, was the advisor to whom? King Louis the what? 13. King Louis the 14th, his advisor was a different cardinal named Cardinal Mazarin. But basically, what we're going to see with Cardinal Mazarin and Cardinal Richelieu is the same attempt, and that is to make the monarch of France the most powerful entity in France and to make France the dominant culture in Europe. Now he's going to do this through some less than moral means. For instance, he has no problem with imprisoning people guilty or innocent if they stand in his way. He's what you would call a Machiavellian personality. To him, the ends justify the means. As long as he gets what he thinks is the better outcome, then he doesn't really care how he gets there. Now, he himself didn't agree with the Huguenots, but he did understand that if he... By the way, what's a Huguenot? What is a Huguenot? Let's start there. No one remembers? A Huguenot is another word for Protestants, specifically French Protestants. So these Protestants, he doesn't agree with them, but he also understands that it's a mistake to kick everybody out because of different faith. You see this what happened in Spain. So he ends up allowing the Huguenots to keep their faith. What he doesn't allow them, though, is their armies. The reason being is, if you look at the history of Europe, a lot of what we would call the Protestant Reformation has nothing to do with religion and has everything to do with politics. Groups that are trying to gain control or rebel are just really using religion as an excuse. So in order to keep that from happening, he does not allow Protestants to have their armies, which was, in feudalism, basically kind of they all had that. So this is a means of control. Basically, if you didn't submit to the king's rule, you were just destroyed flat out. So this was a way of keeping this control. Now, Richelieu sets out to make the throne the dominant power, and he's going to succeed in doing so. And while doing so, he's going to anger a lot of people, especially the nobles. So when Louis XIII's son ends up taking the throne, he is going to have to contend with a revolution, specifically a group of nobles, as well as a backing from the middle and lower classes. They had this rebellion against the crown. Collectively, this rebellion is known as the Fronde. And what happens because of this is Louis looks on these advisors, these nobles, who are supposed to be giving their loyalty to the crown. They're supposed to be giving all of their efforts in support of the crown. In his mind, they are betraying him and the state. And that really kind of sticks with Louis for quite some time. This is, in fact, one of the main reasons why he is going to adopt the policy of an absolute monarch, because he just thinks that these guys aren't trustworthy. You can't keep them in a position if you can't rely on them. In addition, he's a bit of a vain person, if you didn't get that sense from the video. He starts dedicating things to himself, sees himself as the sun god Apollo, born in flesh. So this isn't a situation where we're going to have a guy who, is really down to earth. He's sort of doing his own thing. Ultimately, there's going to be some positive effects of his hubris, but it's also going to mean the downfall of the country in the long run. We'll get to that here in a second. Suffice it to say, we can kind of almost see this logic behind why everything is going on. Now, despite this, he had his own cardinal as an advisor, Cardinal Mazarin, as I said, and he's going to have this back in terms of faith as well. Louis actually ends up revoking the Edict of Nantes. Do you guys remember what was the Edict of Nantes? What did that grant everyone? The freedom to? Yes, the freedom of religion. So he is going to be pretty much a stout Catholic, even though we have this sort of period of peace beforehand. He is going to anger some people as well through his policies, and we'll see why. That's Cardinal Richelieu. Again, you get a sense, I think, a little bit of the power that the church still had in the monarchies of Europe, because these guys were running the state, essentially. He wasn't a ruler, but he was in charge, if that makes any sense. So, step one, let's talk Louis. As we said, the Fronde drives him from his palace. That's going to result in his push for absolute power. Again, we talked about the fact that he adopted the sun as his personal symbol. And guys, symbols play an important role. If you think about it, we use symbols all the time to help convey complex meanings in our ideas. Think about the United States, for instance. Our symbols really espouse part of our history. Does anyone know what the country's motto is? U.S. motto? Yeah.
Formation of God. That's what.
Yeah. It's Latin. It's actually on every single coin and dollar we have. Yeah. Sorry? In God We Trust didn't exist anywhere in our country until the 1960s, 1970s, something like that. It was against communism. Find it?
And you?
E pluribus unum. Do you know what that means in Latin? From many, one. E pluribus unum, from many, one. Think about what that says about our country. We are one people born from many different peoples. Sorry? Peter? Like the rap? No. The fact that we use symbols to communicate to people who don't speak English should say something to that effect. For instance, do you guys know why we use red for stop signs? It's a stark color for sure. It stands out. There's almost an unease to the color of red. Yes, it's the color of blood. Often seen as the color of violence and anger. It's something that just kind of disquiets us. So red is often used in this way. And if you notice, in almost every country, we use the same methodology. We use the same color because it speaks to us on a level beyond simple words. So you can even understand what red means stop. You see red, you can stop. The divine right, you believe wholeheartedly in it, which of course means what? What does the divine right mean? Yeah.
Isn't that like where the thought that God put the monarchy on Earth to like act as God?
Yeah. Who appoints me? God. Can't go anywhere else from that, you know. So like, who appoints you? Well, there's this council that would have voted me in. God. Okay. You know, leaves little to question. Who's Jean-Baptiste Colbert? His financial advisor. He was also a mercantilist, as you know. Did he do a good job raising money? Yes, he did. Louis just spent even more. Think of how bad the economy would be if we didn't have Colbert. Pretty devastating, actually. You know, the fact that Colbert is able to keep the country going is pretty significant. I mean, France becomes one of the most powerful economies in the world, and despite this, and the interesting thing is this begs this interesting question: is debt good or bad? True. Why? Why is debt bad? Yeah.
Because like every year, you only have money to pay back. There's still money added on top of that, like you have to pay like interest.
And paying interest can hurt pretty bad. Is debt necessary? That's a little bit interesting question. You guys ever want to own a house? Probably going to go into debt. You know? I mean, most of us don't have $200,000 just kind of fling down on the house. So we have to go into debt if we want certain things. I think the factor is debt is a risk, and it can pay off, or it can bite you in the butt depending on your actions. If you look at the economy as risk for reward, most everything we do, you're taking on a risk in the hope that you're going to have this reward. For instance, why go to college? Won't you go hugely into debt? Odds are good, yeah. But a job that pays more than if you didn't have it, risk for reward. Does that kind of make sense? So it really depends. Debt in and of itself isn't bad. It's what we do with debt, why we go into debt, that we can make that judgment. For instance, we understand I'm going to debt to get a college degree. We don't understand I'm going to go into debt so I can get a new stereo. What? You know, this is different types of debt, if that makes sense. Now, not having debt at all is ideal. You know, because then you owe nothing, it's just live within your means, but that's really hard to do. There are different kinds of debt, if that makes sense. So, was what Louis doing good or bad debt? Let's analyze what he's doing first. What is he spending all this money on? What is Louis spending these fortunes on? You watched a video on what? He built Versailles. Good. What was Versailles? Yes, it's the heart of the whole country. With Versailles, it's not only his house. That's Louis, by the way. It's also going to be where the government happens. Everyone has to live at Versailles. Do you recall we talked about the Tokugawa shogunate? What they made people do. You had to live in the capital. Why? Because you're otherwise out in the country, and who knows what you're doing. You might be raising an army. You might be fighting wars with your neighbors. Who knows? If you are in the capital, in this case Versailles, then I can keep an eye on you. But there's another aspect to it as well. First, let's look at what he's wearing. So, you know, most people say he's wearing tights. No, not exactly. He's wearing stockings and knee breeches. They're just tight fitting, showing off those leg muscles.
Why would you want that as a
Why do you want what?
Why would they want that though? Because isn't that like girls?
No, this is yeah, exactly. This was powerful. You know, this was a masculine physique. You know, I mean, dude's got a sword on. You know, no big deal. He also got a cane. First of all, understand that what we consider masculine and what we consider feminine changes from culture to culture. The idea of, like, for instance, women being emotional. That's a European thing. It's not so much the case in other places. Stoicism. But in addition, I like this because it shows a bit of what he's wearing. Virgil got this enormous cape, all fur and silk. What do you see on the cape, by the way? Yeah, it's the fleur de lis, the flower of life. It's the house symbol for the House Bourbon, the royal family, which is also why we have Google. Hey, yes. It's also why there's a French.
Huh? Is that?
That's where French comes from. Oh, Louis XVI, of course. Anyways, but you also have the different layers. Clothing was very complex at this time. There's a reason, actually, why children would wear essentially what we would think of as a dress for most of boys and girls, because dresses were much simpler to make. Basically, if you think about it, dress is a tube, with little shoulder holders. Making pants was really difficult. I'm not a seamster, whatever you call it, a male seamstress, but I can't make stuff. I can't sew. I've tried, but I'm not very good at it. Do what? That's not sewing. So let's talk about the V system as well. So as we said, one of the big problems we have to face is these nobles are going to go to war, yes? Well, how can we keep them, because the fact is them warring actually is good for us as a king, because if they're fighting each other, they're not fighting me, So we want them to compete, but we'd rather not have them kill each other. For one thing, it's messy. Two, it hurts the peasants where our taxes are coming from. It's just bad all around. So how can we do this? What can we do to make people work together but still compete? Well, the answer is both brilliant and stupid. First of all, where does all power come from? It's the king. How so? Where's the nobles' power come from? They have power and authority and wealth, and where's all that come from? Yes, but what does the king give them in order to do this? Land. They have the land that allows them to do all sorts of stuff. So, you want to get goody-goody with the king. You want to suck up. Because if you're in his good graces, your friends, he's going to take care of you, right? So that's what you want to do. You want to be buddy-buddy. So imagine the king comes to you and says, hey, I need you to do me a favor. Yeah, sure, what do you need? My bed is really big. Okay, like really tall, like huge. I can't even get out of it without a hand. Would you come by my room tomorrow and help me get out of bed? Sure. All right, thanks. See you then. And so you're like, well, that's a little strange, but this is great because, I'm going to be in close proximity. We can talk and maybe, get in his good graces, and this will be good for me. So you show up the next morning, and there's a line. And in line is just that jerk-faced guy who's next door. I hate him so much. What are you doing here, jerk-face? Well, I'm here to help the king with his slippers. Oh, yeah? I can tell him to get out of bed. We're going to, touch for, 2 seconds. Oh, I hate you so much. Get that job from you. So now we're competing for these little jobs, not for land. It's stupid, but it works. That's the Levy system. He's basically using nobles as his servants. And they're fighting over, no, I get to hold the jar for his medicine today. Jerk back off. This is how it's working, and it works. He's also spending money on the arts. And now his objective is to make it the cultural center of Europe. And he's going to succeed. Writers like Molière, artistic systems like the ballet, the academies, they're all funded by Louis' money. And this money is going to make France's culture the dominant culture in Europe. Everybody wants to be like the French. Everything that's best is French. Best food, French. Best clothes, French. Best art, French. You're nobody if you don't have a French, painting on your walls. How dare you, plebeian? The academies instruct others in the French methods. So people are coming from all over Europe to learn how the French go about their artistic forms. And this is going to spread cultural ideas. You know how French cuisine is considered the best in Europe? That's why. Although others would disagree with that. The Italians predominantly. No one in England, because English food isn't really that well known. There's this joke, I forget exactly how it goes, but basically the idea of heaven is that all of the chefs are Italian or French, depending on their particular methodology. In the heaven scenario and in the hell scenario, all the chefs are English. So, that... Well, anyways, sad trombone. So here's Versailles again. Here's the front door. So again, you can imagine if you're a noble, this is a pretty sweet deal. Oh, I have to live in a palace. Oh no, don't make me do that. Yeah, this is where you're going. Let's take a look at the Hall of Mirrors for a second. This was shown in the video. And the thing I would like to focus on is probably one of the things most people don't think of. Check out the floors, right? This is hardwood flooring. Hardwood flooring's pretty. But look at the detail. First of all, look at this design. It's like a basket woven design, and this is done by hand. So every single chip of wood had to be put in carved by hand and fit perfectly. So this was a huge amount of expense for what you're walking on. Crystal chandeliers all the way down. These gold embossed statues. I mean, everything is just busy, 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 busy. Let's show how pretty everything can be. Here's the Queen's bedroom. Look how loud it is. It is. It's for me, this would be too much. It's like, you're trying to sleep or anything, just like,
I prefer darker stuff.
A couple things, guys. You notice that we've got this nice curtained bed. You know why the curtain's there?
In case you have like bullet around.
For privacy? Partially. There's another reason for it, though. There is no central air, and there's no heating. You've got a fireplace. It's actually not very here. But that's about it. And fireplaces don't heat rooms very well. Not really. But it does heat very well is body heat. You draw those curtains shut, and it actually makes like a nice little warm area for it to hang out in. So it actually makes quite a bit of sense. Also keeps the bugs away. But you got a lot going on here, and it's again showing wealth, but also kind of a personal little thing. Anyways, that is one of the chapels. I say one of them because there are several. Questions, all right?
Oh no.
Or comment?
No, I just thought that was the bedroom because.
No, I see what you're saying. Now, if you actually look back farther in, there's a pipe organ as well, and this is another kind of advanced thing. Pipe organs are starting to be developed and spread around, and that is something that we don't have everywhere. A pipe organ is a huge instrument. It takes up a building. But what it also allows us is to play complex musical compositions during Mass. And this is going to start to see what we consider classical music. A lot of the earlier composers were actually writing for church pieces. So we'll get to that here a little bit later. But basically, Louis is going to roll for 72 years. And more or less, he's going to have some good successes. For instance, he does make France the dominant culture. He's going to make it dominant power. I mean, France is in its golden age. It's never going to be more powerful and more popular than this. Well, that's actually strictly not true. It's going to become more powerful, and that's going to be under the reign of Napoleon. Now, one thing I find very interesting, I'll go and say this now too. We have a habit in this country of making fun of the French army. This comes from World War II because France was basically conquered in a few weeks. And basically say, like, jokes like, hey, would you like to buy a French gun? It's basically brand new. It's only been dropped once. Or it's never been fired, only dropped once. That's the joke. because they just surrendered anyways, that's actually not really true. The French army was one of the, in fact, if you look at number of victories, they are the most successful, best army in the history of the world. So that's actually not really, really fair. However, the big problems that Louis has is, first, his wars are incredibly costly, and they really often don't end up in any gains. More often than not, he actually faces disasters. A good example also of spending a huge amount of money on something that really doesn't go anywhere is the War for Spanish Succession. In the end, Louis has to essentially agree that he is not going to take the Spanish throne and not going to unify them, because that would end up resulting in an unfair balance. Basically, have you guys ever played Monopoly?
Yes.
You know how you got that usually in a lot of games, it's not like, completely one-sided. You'll have like both sides kind of build up, and then somebody lands on something, and it's usually something, a lot of hotels, and they're not out of the game, but they're like basically like mortgaging everything, selling everything. They're bound to just like a few properties. Before that is balance of power. Everyone's more or less equal. And the fear is that if one power here basically gains too much power, they're going to take over everything. So this is a way for us to maintain a balance. What ends up happening more often than not is we have wars break out because there's a fear of the balance of power, and basically it's not going to work out in the long run. Also, as we said, he revokes the Edict of Nantes, and this is going to result in religious conflict. Okay. Any questions on this? That's pretty much going to be it for France. On the back, and we'll start. Sorry, I'm doing an awful lot of talking today. It's not being nice to my throat. All right. You're fly up. They're up. Anybody's up. Sarah. Go. There. So one thing I want to start looking at with you guys a little bit is how to go about writing all this stuff down. Because one thing I've noticed a lot of folks going through school is that they're told pretty much from the first day that if it ends up on the board, you should write it down. That's really not true. It's not really a good way of doing things. Not so much in terms of taking notes from a board, but especially whenever you're taking notes from a book, which you'll actually do quite a bit in college. So what I want to show you guys how to do is how to cut the fat out, so to speak. So we're going to be spending a little bit of time today and throughout the rest of the weeks kind of looking at, like, if you see something big and bulky like this, how do I make it something a little bit smaller like that, or like most of my notes are most of the time. So we're going to spend a little bit of time this and there going over this to build it up as a skill, because I think you'll find it's a valuable skill to possess, not only in the academic world, but just from day to day. Most jobs have some aspect of taking information and condensing it. I mean, a great example of that is if you're in real estate. Basically your clients give you a list of things, and you cut out the stuff from what they say they want and kind of make something that makes sense, and you develop a plan of action that's showing houses and things like that. Or if you're selling a house, you have to create an advertisement essentially that has all the pertinent information. You got to take that from other places and create like a square footage and price and where it is and all this stuff. So it's a valuable skill to possess, but it does take a little bit of time. So don't worry if it takes you a little while. That's okay. We'll just work on it together. All right, so starting off, we're talking about Austria and Prussia. Well, where is Prussia on the map? Prussia with a P. Yes, not the same thing as Russia. Russia's over here. Does anyone know where Prussia is? Prussia is in northern eastern Germany. If you hear Prussian, think German. Now, Germany has different regions, just like we do in the States. Prussia is different than Bavaria, for instance. So just consider this as we talk about things. If I'm talking Prussia, think Germany. Okay? Because guess what the next section's on? Russia. So two different places. Not Soviet. We won't get there yet. We'll still be talking about the Tsar. All right, so first of all, let's look at what it is we're talking about. Whenever you're looking through a big block of text, what should you look for first to start trimming the fat away? What are we looking for? Yeah. Okay, yes, good. How do we tell what's important and what's not? That's the first thing. We look for proper names. So we see it here, Holy Roman Empire. There we go. That begins telling us, what is this about? Well, it's about the Holy Roman Empire. What about the Holy Roman Empire? Well, basically it's a collection of smaller states. There you go. That was not so bad, though. But let's look at a different one. The Holy Roman Empire was further divided on the basis of religion. Protestants ruled the north, whereas Catholics were in control of the south. In May 1618, Ferdinand, the Catholic Habsburg King of Bohemia, was attempting to suppress Protestant uprisings. In retaliation, the two Protestant nobles threw a pair of the king's officials out the window. This led to the war we call the 30 Years' War. Now, if you guys pay attention to the whiteboard over here, I have over here the exact same block of text done just a little bit differently. So you'll notice up here, I left out this part, but all the rest of this. What's the subject matter we're mostly talking about? Ferdinand and the Holy Roman Empire. So who was Ferdinand? He was the king of Bohemia. He was a Catholic. He was a Habsburg. What's a Habsburg? What's that mean? He was part of the royal family of the Holy Roman Empire. They were called the Habsburgs. What happened during his reign? There was a Protestant uprising. What does he do? Well, he cracks down on them, basically not allowing them to do this and that and the other. That retaliation from the Protestants is known as the Defenestration of Prague. The Defenestration of Prague is where they took these two guys and threw them out a window. That results in the 30 Years' War. So again, this is a basic skeleton that you could maybe add a few details here and there, but this takes like, maybe 10 seconds to write down, as opposed to that, which will take minutes. So this speeds us up. Does that kind of make sense? So this is kind of what you ought to be looking for. I realize that it's easier in some cases, we'll just write whatever's in front of you, but that will wear your hand out faster. And also, I'll usually wait for like, okay, well, let's just hang out here until you guys are done writing. A lot of their teachers don't. They just keep going. It's like, catch up, boom, on we go. So this is something that is helpful to learn how to do. All right, so basically, the 30 Years' War is going to be a conflict that starts as a religious war, ostensibly, where you have Protestants in the north fighting against Catholics in the south, but eventually it more or less evolves into a political conflict. Again, sort of like what we saw with Cardinal Mars, or Richelieu, what he was afraid of is that it starts as a religious conflict and turns political. And what often you have is Catholics versus Catholics, Protestants versus Protestants, everybody's just kind of for themselves. And we're going to have a changed Europe because of this. The 30 Years' War is going to be fought using foot soldiers predominantly. And there's going to be some new designs on how we're going to go about fighting this war. Now let me bring up this pen so I can write this on the smart board so you guys at home can see what it is we're talking about. Smart technologies. I need board tools. There we go. All right. So the big thing we're going to have change things is we're going to have cannons. All right. Cannons are kind of big things. And if you look at traditional medieval castles and fortresses, they more or less are built like squares. Okay? So if we have cannons on the walls, I can shoot this direction, I can shoot this direction, I can shoot this direction, and I can shoot this direction. The problem with that is enemy armies can attack at the weakest point, which are the triangle, or the angles. I can't defend against that. I might be able to get one or two cannons turned around. That's too crazy of an angle for me to get. Yeah.
What is that?
Defenestration of Prague. It sounds just like the spell, or spells just like the sound. So they designed what we call star forts. We learned about this in the video. So imagine a star shape, all right? my awesome star. All right, so I with my cannons can shoot this way, this way, this way, this way, this way, this way. Basically, you get the idea, right? There's no point anywhere they can attack where I can't shoot them. Get it? What's that? I mean, basically, this is a much better design if I'm going to be defending because I can shoot anywhere. Another thing is walls are traditionally built like so. You know, big chunk of stone built high. We're going to start building stone walls like that. You know why? What? We can be up here. That's not. Can't really dodge cannonball. But what can happen is imagine a cannonball, boom, it's like there. Where's all the energy going? Into the wall. All right. Let's say a cannonball hits this. Boom. What's it going to do? Up and over. Or it'll hit, but it's going to lose its energy as it rolls up. Again, it's a ball. Yeah, it actually makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? And of course, there's a problem if you're standing right on top of it. You know, it's going to. So we tended to make a combination of these different walls. But this is the idea. Okay, does that kind of make sense? All right. So that's the demonstration of Prague. Again, you have these Protestants rebelling against the king of Bohemia, and they end up throwing his advisors, or not really his advisors, but his men, out a window in retaliation, kill him. You know, it's such a weird way of starting a war. I mean, we're going to get some pretty weird ways, but this pretty much takes the cake, with the possible exception of World War I. That could be argued that it started because of a sandwich, but we'll get to that later. But this begins with these guys getting pitched out of the window, and the retaliation. So Ferdinand, he's actually going to become the Holy Roman Emperor. He's elected as the emperor, and so he gets his Catholic allies to fight. This is this one, by the way. That's that whole block effect, like so. But basically, he's going to elect them as, or he's going to get these allies, and it's going to fight against the Protestants. Well, this makes the other Protestant nations like England very nervous because Spain and France, as well as Poland, are going to back the Holy Roman Empire. So they're worried, well, what if they don't stop there and just keep rolling through and attacking all of these different Protestant nations? We barely are going to be able to fight off Spain, much less this entire unified front. So we're going to band with all the Protestants and fight against the Catholics. So this begins as a religious war. Eventually, though, like the French are going to say, we don't really care about fighting against the Protestants as much because we want to take this other territory. So we're going to attack Germany, you know. And this whole thing kind of becomes political instead of actual religious. So the situation is going to be one where the war changes to one of political convenience over actual religious differences. Does that kind of make sense? Yes, no, maybe so? Are there any questions? Basically, over here it says Ferdinand, elected HRE, Holy Roman Emperor. He gathers the Catholic allies. Who's the Catholic allies? Well, Poland and Spain. They're winning initially, but then the Protestants join against them, and then the war changes to political. Yes?
What is Carthage?
Basically, I'm just saying that he is going to try to suppress the rebellion. If that makes sense. And that, of course, results in the demonstration of Prague. Eventually, the war is going to end under the Peace of Westphalia. We'll get to that probably tomorrow. We are about out of time. So I'm going to call this it for notes today. I'm going to go ahead and shut down the recording, but anybody, I'm going to put this back up so you can finish anything you might need, and we'll continue this discussion tomorrow. Okay?